it's me, Anna, the Joyful Reader, here to share with you my November wrap-up. Now, if you watched my November TBR, I was supposed to do the Believe-a-thon, Read-a-thon, and let me tell you what. After I finished The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab, I went into a massive reading slump. I couldn't like pick up a novel. It was a struggle to get through the books I did get through, which, if we don't count all the graphic novels I read, was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I got through 7 books, 2 middle grades, 2 romances, 2 self-help books, Addie LaRue. Oh, that's 7. That was so difficult. Wow. So let's talk about these books and just my general reading experience. A series I've mentioned pretty much in every video that I've made on this channel so far is the Immortals series by Tamora Pierce. I finished with my BFF, Liesel. We finished Emperor Mage in November, and we are now into the Realms of the Gods, which is book 4 and the final book of the series. Spoil it too much, but the series follows a young girl named Dane who discovers that she has a different type of magic from everyone else in her kingdom. She has a thing called wild magic, where she is able to speak to all animal-like creatures. The other middle grade that I read was Frostheart by Jamie Littler, and this book was really good. We follow a young boy named Ash who has this magical ability to sing, and he can control some of the monsters that are in the icy tundra that he lives in. He gets exiled from his village, and then he joins a motley crew on this huge sleigh, and he goes to find out more about himself and more about his parents and see what happened to them. This book was so touching. I cried several times. It's a nice winter read because it takes place in an icy tundra, so you kind of get that winter vibe from it. It was really cute. I can't wait to read the second one. I think the second one comes out in January next year. Post Anna, editing Anna will figure that out. What happened to my hair? It got so flat. Okay, there we go. Okay, yes, as far as adult fiction, I read The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. I'm not even gonna get into it here. I'm just gonna say I read it, and I will link in the cards if you want to see my rant review on it. I will link it in the description box if you want to see me rant review it. Bottom line was, like, it was a well-written story. I just didn't like it. Yep. So then I read 2 self-help books. Specifically, I listened to 2 self-help books. The first one is The Body Keeps Score by Bessel van der Kolk. This book is all about how the traumas in our lives get stored into our body. Hi. Editing Anna here, here to re-explain this book because I did such a terrible job at it earlier. So, The Body Keeps Score is about how trauma, stress can manifest itself as illness in our bodies. The author proposes that a mindfulness practice, whether that's like yoga, meditation, cognitive behavioral therapy, things like this, of being just aware and mindful of ourselves, can help us combat those internalized stressors in our lives. The author talks a lot about the post-traumatic stress syndrome, that it's not limited to those who go off to war and veterans. Post-traumatic stress syndrome is associated with veterans because of the horrific things that they have to see, that they experience, that sometimes they... It was really interesting. It was a really heartbreaking book to read about. It ends on like a more like hopeful tone, that healing is possible, but it's a good one to read if you're someone who, not just like millennial meme get triggered about things, but like you really have like a high emotional response to things, that like you know in your head, like, yeah, it's okay to be upset about this, but I'm like, instead of like maybe a 5 level out of 10, you're like an 11 out of 10 upset. In my normal everyday life, I would not behave this way. Like I would not be this upset. But sometimes something is said or something is done and it like pushes this like a button in my brain and in my emotional body, and I can't, it's like almost like I can't control myself. This book is really good at just, you know, talking about cognitive behavioral therapy and just ways that you can improve your life in general, so you're not out of control of yourself. You can control your emotions or at least manage them. So this book was really great. I really liked it. It does have a more somber tone, just keeping that in mind, but it's still a pretty good book. The next book is How to Be Yourself by Dr. Ellen Hendricksen. And this book is probably the best book I have ever read on social, capital S, social anxiety. So this book was so fascinating and so interesting. If you're someone who struggles with social anxiety and just understanding why you do the things that you do, what triggers you into having these episodes of social anxiety, it was just so good. And I really want to do a like a deep dive of some of the lessons in the book because it was just so fantastic. I listened to it on Audible, and then I also bought the PDF version so I can like highlight and make notes in it. I'm gonna reread it because social anxiety is my vice right now. I've got a pretty good grasp on my depression or my depressive tendencies, and I know what things I can do to help combat or manage my depression. But with social anxiety, I'm still struggling with that. So I'm ready to kind of like, I've listened through it, now I'm ready to like dive deep into the topics and the advice that she gives. Another thing is she also recommends cognitive behavioral therapy, where you're learning how to behave differently by practicing different things. And then I read, how many volumes here? 1, 2, okay, so I read volumes 1 through 13, and then 1 through 12. How many volumes is that? I read 25 volumes of manga this month. I just really wasn't in the mood for books. I kept trying to pick up books, and I was just like, I just don't want to. This is taking too much brain power. And so I switched over to reading a couple of my favorite mangas, and I'm a sucker for like shoujo mangas. So I read 13 volumes of Dengeki Daisy. And so this manga is about a high school girl named Teru, and she is left orphaned at a young age, and her brother takes care of her until her brother passes. And there's like this like ragtag team of his associates and friends that help raise Teru because she's now completely orphaned. And there is a hacker named Daisy that basically is like her text pen pal that like checks in with her, and you get to find out through the manga like who Daisy is, what relationship he has to her brother and to all of her brother's associates, and how close he really is to Teru in proximity. So it's really funny. It's got kind of like a touch of like lewd humor that Japanese manga and animes are known for, and but overall it's just a really sweet story, and the plot of like hackers kind of going at each other is really interesting, and keeps like the situation a little bit tense. And it's interesting to find out how the story unfolds, like why her brother died, who caused his death, things like that. So I really like that one. I will put a disclaimer: the age gap in the romance is possibly disturbing to a lot of people. It still disturbs me a little bit, but I still like the story. The male love interest is 24, and Teru, who's in high school, is 16. So there's like a really big age gap, which is very common in a lot of Japanese. In my brain, I kind of like age Teru up to 18, and I kind of age her love interest down to like 20. So like it like makes more sense in my brain. The other manga that I read was Haru Ride, which is like Youthful Ride. It's basically just about this young girl who is going off to high school. She developed this crush on this boy in middle school, and then he kind of like vanishes before they can or I guess he moves away. He doesn't just like vanish. It's not magical or anything. And he like leaves and then comes back for high school, but he has a different name, and his like whole persona is different because she liked him in middle school because he was a little bit more feminine and just like really quiet and sweet. He wasn't like other guys, I guess. And then in high school he grows up and puberty has blessed him with like gorgeous looks and great attractive height, and he's kind of got this like standoffish personality, which I guess feeds into the stereotype of girls liking bad boys a little bit, but he's like soft for her, you know? So after reading those manga, I kind of got into a sentimental vibe, and I found these were recommended by Noelle Gallagher, who just reached 100K subscribers here on YouTube, and I'll link her channel because I get a lot of book recommendations from her. I read The Kiss Quotient and The Bride Test pretty much in a day. So both of these are romantic stories. They are very steamy. So just keep that in mind. Like if these were movies, they would be rated R for racy. So The Kiss Quotient is about our young woman protagonist. What's her name? Oh my gosh, Stella. Oh my golly. Stella, and what's his name? Michael? Stella. Okay, so in this book, our main protagonist, Stella, has Asperger's, and she's kind of has like an aversion to men touching her, and she feels like she doesn't understand sex, and she wants to be better at sex because she believes that all of her bad experiences with sex have been her own fault, and because those things have not been pleasant for her up until this point, she hires a professional escort to help her with this problem. Now she finds that this solution is good because her safety is guaranteed by the agency that supplies the escort, and they're screened for STIs, so she feels a little bit safer in this situation. So she hires an escort, enter Michael, her love interest in this book, and he basically doesn't just teach her about sex. She realizes, you know, she also has an issue with relationships and interpersonal relationships. She basically pays him to be her fake boyfriend. Now, while all of that sounds like a really great Netflix film, I love this book, and it's not so much the romance that I like in it, which I did obviously like that. I'm blushing a little bit because the book is racy. It's also like the interpersonal relationships of the Asian family I just found to be very kind of like relatable. I could just see them. I could see the relationships. What she does really well is the interpersonal relationships, and honestly, I love when interpersonal relationships just feel like you're friends with these people. Like, you know them, you want them to succeed, you're rooting for them. I really enjoyed this book a lot. Then I immediately got The Bride Test, which is not like a secondary book. It basically follows one of the other characters from the book. It's Michael's cousin Kai, follows him. We start the story where Kai's grandma goes to Vietnam to try and find Kai, who has Asperger's, right? Or he has a form of autism that makes it really difficult for him to experience emotions in the same way that other people do. You also learn early in the book that he has lost somebody in his life, and that loss affects him in all of his relationships, and he truly believes he doesn't know how to love anybody. He's not capable of love because of his autism. That's what he thinks about himself. So in order to help him, his grandma goes to Vietnam to find a wife for him, and she basically gives them the summer to live together and to see if they could be compatible. And that's the premise of the story. Now, it sounds a little bit archaic, I know, but what I love in this book is that Esme, our main protagonist, she doesn't just, you know, focus in on, I don't know, trying to woo a man, although that is part of the story. She also goes to America to try to better herself, to educate herself, and to provide opportunities for her family back in Vietnam because they're so poor back home. So again, Helen writes really great interpersonal relationships. The steaminess is super steamy, and you just fall in love with the characters in these books. I read 32 books if you're to count every single one of the mangas, or if you count the manga as one book, then I read a total of 9. Yeah, and that was part of my reading slump. My next video is going to be just what I did during my reading slump type video. And thanks so much for tuning in, and I will see you all in my next video.